Welcome to the first episode in my new series, How to Code in Java for Minecraft. So this first episode is just going to be us getting the workspace environment set up. So to do that, you're going to want to navigate to eclipse.org. And once you get here, you're going to want to hit this download button up here. And then you're going to want to get Eclipse Neon. Now this right here, this button should give you the version that you need for your computer, but you can also click this here and you can look through and you can find this and it'll have more options over here for you. But I already have it, but whenever you download it, you'll get this and it'll unzip into an installer, and then whenever it loads up, you just want to say that you want to install Eclipse for Java developers. Now the next thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to navigate over to SPigot.org. There's the link right there. And we're going to want to go to Downloads, Spigot/Build Tools, and then we're going to want to download buildtools.jar. And then after we get this, sorry, let me close out of my program here. You're going to want to create a new folder on your desktop or wherever you want it, and you're going to want to call it build tools. And then you want to open that folder and put build tools in there. Now you shouldn't need Safari anymore or whatever internet browser you're using. So now what you're going to do is you're going to open up either terminal or command prompt if you're on Windows, and you're want to type cd, and you're going to want to put in the path to your folder. And if you're on Mac, you can just click and drag this little folder icon into terminal and it'll drop the path into it like that. But I'm pretty sure on Windows you'll have to manually type it. Then after you get in here, what you're going to want to type is java-jar, and then drag in, sorry, give me a second. And then you're going to want to drag in build tools like that. Give me 1 second. And then you're going to want to press enter or return so it starts going. And then this is probably going to take a while, so I'm going to cut the recording here and come back whenever this is done. Alright, so the building has finished, and now if we take a look in our folder, you can see we have a bunch of stuff here. And this file right here is the file that we need in order to be able to code. Now, what you need to do is you need to open up Eclipse, and this is how it should look, or if you have another version of Eclipse, maybe that you previously downloaded, that'll pop up. And then you're going to be given this window right here, and you're going to be asked to provide a path for your workspace. Now this is my main workspace, but I'm going to create a tutorial workspace, just for this series. So whenever you press OK, it'll start to enter the workspace. It'll do all of its little building stuff, and after a minute here, we should see that the window pops up, and this is how the window will look. You can just exit out of this tab unless you wanna, maybe go through a layout tutorial or something like that. But after you exit out of that, you should get to this view. And once you get to this view, there's a couple things that we need to do in order to get set up. The first thing that we want to do is we want to exit out of both of those tabs, and then just grab this tab and move that down. Now you'll see that there's an empty area over here, and this is where all the package stuff goes. Now I'll tell you what I mean by package stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to File, New, Java Project. And what this is going to do is this is going to allow us to create, our plugin or whatever it is in Java that we're trying to make. So I'm just going to name this tutorial 1. And now you can see we have this folder, and it's got a source folder and the Java system library. Now, on its own, this doesn't do anything. It's just a blank project. And the way that we can actually use Minecraft within Java, or use Java to control the Minecraft server, is by adding in that jar file that we created with build tools into this workspace. And this is called importing an API is what it's called. And this basically just means that we're taking somebody else's code and we're putting it into our workspace so we don't have to recode what they already did. Now the way that we do this is we right click on here, which is on this folder, and then we're going to go down to properties, and then that's going to open up this window right here. And we're going to want to click on Java build path, libraries, and then add external jars. And then this should pop up a window, and then you're going to want to navigate to where your build tools folder is, and you're going to want to select this file. Then you're going to click open and apply. And then now you can see we have this new part here called referenced libraries. And if we open it, you can see we have this here, and this contains all of the Minecraft and SPigot/bucket resources. Now that we have the library imported, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the source folder, which will contain all of the actual code for what we're making. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a new package within source, and you can name this pretty much whatever you want, but I generally just do me.kw. whatever the abbreviation for my plugin would be. So since this is tutorial 1, I would just do T1. Now let's say we were calling this like economy plugin, then I would do EP. But since this is tutorial 1, I'm going to do T1. Then just click finish. Now you can see that we have this package here called me.kw.t1. Now within here, we're going to make a new class, and we're going to call this main, and then we're just going to hit finish. Now this is the main class file that all of our code is going to be, that at least most of our code is going to be situated in. Now before we get started into going into how we can interface with Minecraft, I'm going to actually teach you how Java works. Now Java is what we call object-oriented programming, and this means that we create objects that have attributes, and we can manipulate those attributes to do some cool things. So for instance, if I know this doesn't pertain to Java, but if I were to open up just a quick Python right here, and I make a new file, and I just type, I don't even need to make a new file. If I just type a equals 1, and I type a, you can see that a equals to 1. But now, if I wanted to say, if I make b equal to 2, and I wanted to say get what a plus b equals, I could just do a plus b. Now a plus b equals 3. But what you can't do, well, you can do it, but simply, you can't just say, okay, I want a plus b to become an integer object, which is just like a whole number storage device, and run methods off of it, like turn it into a string, or store it in this place, store it in that place. We can't really do that without the object-oriented programming. So in Java, how this would work is, let's say, here, I'm just going to give an example. So I'm going to make a new class. You don't have to do this unless you want to. I'm going to make a new class called example object. Now within an example object, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say private string name, and then private integer test. So now these are just two parameters that we're going to associate with the example object, these are also known as attributes. Now, something that I will explain to you, when we say private here, this means that only this example object class can access these values unless we make a method within this for other classes like our main class to be able to retrieve this information. For example, if we go here and do public void test, and I'll promise I'll explain what all the public void and stuff means, but if we say me.kw.t1 now see how we can't get the example object? That's because it contains private data and we don't have a way to get it yet. Now, with every object that we create, we also have to create what's called a constructor, which basically lets us create an instance of the object. And to do this in Eclipse, you can just go up to source and then go down to generate constructor using fields, and most of the time you just want to hit select all and then OK, and then you can just get rid of this little part here that says super, as it doesn't really affect anything to have it there, and personally I just don't like having it there. But so now you can see we have this here. So now this is where I'm going to explain to you what the public void stuff means. So in Java, when you create a method, traditionally you make it a public method. This means that not only can other classes access this method, but other people that are making a project using your code can access this method. For instance, whenever we go to interface with Minecraft, you'll notice that we can use all these Minecraft commands that are within here, and that is because all the methods that they made, the people that built Spigot and Bucket, all the methods that they made are public methods, which means that we're able to interface with them. Now the next thing that goes after public is going to be what the method returns. Now if the method's not returning anything and it's just executing a task, you would set this to void. For instance, if I wanted to say set test and I put integer int in here, integer test, and I could say this dot test equals test. And now if I were to call this and give it a number within the parentheses, then it would set test equal to whatever that is. Now notice that there's no return statement here because it's void, it's not going to give anything. But notice if I were to set this to say integer, it's going to throw an error and it's going to say this method must return a result of type integer. And so the way that we can make this valid is if we change this from from set test to get test, get rid of the stuff in the parentheses here, we can say return this dot test. Now when you're making an object, as often as possible you want to use this dot whatever the variable is. This just ensures that you're getting the object's variable and not the method given variable, and that all complies in with the variable scope. For instance, if I in here say integer test equals 1, you can see that it throws an error because we're already accessing, there's already an integer test. But if I were to go say if I were to make that, there's just some instances in which you can make there's a global scope and then there's local scope. What local scope means is that the variable that you're creating is only available on the local scope. So for instance, if I were to say string test equals test, now I have this string test string. Now I have this string called test string. Now see how it says unreachable code? This is because it's after the return statement. So we're just gonna move it up here. Now you can see that I have this string called test string, but if I make a method outside of here, you can see I cannot access test string. And that is because test string is defined within this function. So only this function can access test string unless we export it out of the function. Whereas within any function, I can access test, because, and that's indicated by these highlights, because test is defined outside of any function or method. Method and function basically mean the same thing, by the way. They can be used interchangeably. Now, the thing that we're going to do next is we're going to create what's called a getter and a setter. And to do that, we go to source, generate getters and setters, select all, and press OK. Now, what this does is this allows us to go over here, and we can say new example, we can say example object test equals new example object. And now what this, I'll get to this error in a second. Basically what this means is, this is saying, okay, create an object that is an example object, and this right here, this is setting this to have a value. Excuse me. And so this means that we're creating a new example object that's assigned to this value. And so anytime we use this value, we're accessing an example object. So now the error here says the constructor example object is undefined, and you can see here it wants us to add the string and integer. And so here I'll just put test, and for the integer you just put like 1 or whatever. I can see there's no problems. Now if I make a function down here, we can see if we do test dot, it gives us this context menu which shows us everything that we can do. Now you see this method here called getTest. Now this is an integer that it gives. So you can see if I say integer test equals test.getTest, you can see that getTest. Yeah. Oh, anyway, so we can get what test is from the test object. So if we did this, it would give us the value of 1. So that's just a little bit about how the object attributes work and how they're used. So I'm going to get rid of this example object class because we don't need it. I'm going to get rid of this. So now that I've taught you a little bit about how Java works, we're going to actually start interfacing with Minecraft. So in order to do this, we have to tell main to extend Java plugin. And so this tells the Minecraft server that, hey, this class file is a plugin basically, and so this is the class that it's going to use to register the plugin and to execute the code that's within this. Now we can also make multiple classes, but that's more advanced stuff. Traditionally, you put most of your code into one class, but you can organize it down further into multiple classes, which I will show in later tutorials. The first thing that you're going to do, you're going to make a public void method called onEnable. And anytime you make a method in Java, you always have to give it the method name. The first word in the method name is always lowercase, and every word after it is always uppercase. That's called headless camel casing. And so you'll notice, if let's say I wanted to create a function called this is the best tutorial ever. I would type it out like this is the best tutorial ever. And this is called headless camel casing because you're capitalizing every word except for the first word. And this is just a stylistic thing, but it's considered good practice to do this. Now, parentheses, a set of parentheses always goes after this, and you'll notice if I only press one parentheses key, the second one will automatically fill in after it, and that's just a feature of Eclipse. Now, the next thing that you do is you create an open little curly bracket, and this just and press enter, and you'll see it'll automatically make the closing one. And this just signifies that anything that's within these two brackets is a part of this onEnable method that we have. So what we're gonna do in here is we're just gonna say bucket.get server get console sender, send message, and we're gonna say the plugin loaded successfully. Now, if we were to run this right now, it would say the plugin loaded successfully, and that's all that it would do. Now, there's definitely things that you can do further past this. For instance, in later tutorials, I'll show you how to add color codes to this. But for now, this is all you really need to know. Now, the next thing that I will show you is how you can access a player joining the server. So we're gonna make this tutorial plugin a welcome message plugin. So we're gonna say if we want to get whenever the player joins the server, first we want to make a public void on player join event, and then in here we're going to say player join event e. Now you might be wondering, and then you're gonna want to hover over this and import it. So you might be wondering, wait a second, wouldn't we have to call onEnable and on player join event in order for them to actually be executed? Well, that's part of the whole reason that this is right there. So whenever the server internally calls certain events, for instance on the startup event, it will go through every single plugin that's in the plugin folder and execute its onEnable. And similarly, whenever a player joins, the server will go through every plugin and it will pass every method requesting a player join event argument like we've given here, and it'll pass it that. So, and the reason why there's an E here is because this is technically an object, like the example object that we made earlier, and so it has to be given a name. So the type of E is a player join event, but E is the name of our variable. So now in between here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna say player joined equals e.get player. And at the end of every line like this, I forgot to mention this up here, you put a semicolon at the end of every line that's like this. You wouldn't put a semicolon here or here because you'll notice that'll give you major syntax errors. Now you can see player's red, and that just means we have to import player. And so whenever we're importing player, we're saying, hey, SPigot1.11.2.jar, give me the code for entity player. And so now that we have this, we can say joined dot, and you can see we have you can see that we have all these different options that we can do with the player. But for now, we're going to focus on one method, and that's send message. And so in here we can say welcome to the server. Now you could either leave it like this, or we can do something a little bit more complicated, and this is called concatenating. And so what we're going to do is we're going to leave a space here, and we're going to go here, and we're going to put a plus, and we're going to say joined dot get name, and then another plus, and then we're going to put a comma back there. So now you can see what this would point out is this would say welcome to the server. If I was joining Kero to like that. And so you can mess around with that. So that's how we would welcome the player. Now, in order for this to actually work, what we need to do is we need to create something called the PLUGIN.YML. And so you're going to right click on here and you're going to say new file. We're going to call it PLUGIN.YML. And if this message pops up here, just click cancel. And then what we're going to do in here is we're going to construct it in this order. We're going to say name, version, author, main, description. Now, this allows the server to know about our plugin. So we're going to give the name tutorial 1, version 1.0, author, whatever your name is, and then now for main. If you're in here, you can see up at the top here, it says tutorial 1 src me kwt1 main. The me kwt1 main, that is the path to our main file. And remember earlier when I told you that the main file is the server's way of knowing where the code is? Well, this is where we define it. So if we say me.kw.t1.main, then this means that it knows where our main file is. So it knows where to run onEnable, where to run all these other methods. And you can put whatever you want for description. So I'm just going to say this is a tutorial plugin. Now we're going to save this and just quit. And then now after we've added that, you want to right click and click refresh. And so that just reloads everything. If you didn't do that, you would get the error invalid plugin.yml whenever you try to start the server with the plugin. So now, one thing that I forgot to do. Whenever you use an event like this, what you want to do is you want to say implement listener. You're going to want to import listener from org.bucket.event. And then down here, we're going to say bucket.get plugin manager.register events. This. And we're going to make this what's called an event handler. And we're going to import this from org.bucket.event. And so what this means is this method right here is responsible for handling the event player join event. So I'll let that sink in a little bit. So basically we could come up with any other event and make it an event handler, and that makes our method the handler for that event. So this method handles the event of a player joining. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to export. And so we right click on here and click export. Now you're going to go to Java and jar file and then hit next. And then here you're going to select where you want it to go. And I'm going to tell it to go to my test servers plugins folder, which I'm going to name this that. And then we're going to, if you're on Mac, again, you can just drag that in there. And then you would do another slash, and then you would name it. I'm going to do tutorial1.jar. And so if you haven't saved, it'll ask you to save it. And sometimes it'll say there was a warning or whatever. Just save past that. If it says there was an error, read what the error was, it says plugin.yml file out of sync, then just come here and click refresh. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to start this, and you'll notice, oops, I started to. You'll notice whenever these 15 seconds go by that after everything loads up, it will say, sorry for my dogs in the background, they bark at everything, but you can see here as the server loads up, sorry, it's taking a little while, you can see, okay, so you can see here that we got an error. So it shows us as having an invalid plugin.yml, and I think I know why. So after you've made the plugin.yml, you can just drag it over here, and it'll open it up, and we can edit it here. So my mistake here is that I didn't put spaces after these entries, and so that's what that's caused by. So now you can see if we go here, we hit rather large cut. My brother came home and was very disruptive, but what we did is we went in. The thing that I did wrong is that I didn't put a space between the field and the plugin.yml and the colon. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm just gonna re-export this, and now you can see if we go here. And if we do RL, you can see if we go through here, we can find where it says the plugin loaded successfully. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here. So now if we log in, you can see that it will say, come on. It'll say, welcome to the server K-Rhino2 exclamation mark. And so that is a successful plugin that we've made. Now, I would like to thank you for watching the first video in this Java plugin tutorial series, and I hope that you take the time to like and comment, and if you would like to be notified whenever I release the next parts to my tutorials, please go ahead and subscribe. I'll probably be coming out with the next tutorial sometime tomorrow or later tonight. It'll just depend on how long it takes me to record it and everything. But alright, that's this video, and thanks for watching.